Ladies and gentlemen, good Tuesday. Welcome to the Augusta Richmond County Commission meeting. Madam Clerk, I think we have a quorum. We're ready to call this meeting to order.
Ready?
We're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today's invocation will be shared with us by the Pastor J. Michael Sherman of the Covenant Family Church, and we will ask Mr. Dan Funch if he would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand?
Thank you. Let us bow our heads. Almighty Father, we thank you so much for bringing us to this place and to this point in time that we could gather and make such important decisions together. But it is our request today that you grant us wisdom and clarity. We are but men and women. And as we ponder these issues, as we make decisions, we pray that we would be able to make the decisions that are best for our community, that are best for our constituents. Grant us wisdom, grant us clarity, grant us peace above all. This is our prayer today. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are we ready to proceed, Mr. Mayor, with the consent agenda?
No, ma'am. We'd like to acknowledge the pastor for the day, if you don't mind.
Where is it?
He's just Mr.
Who's
Sherman,
got the?
Pastor Michael Sherman.
I know. Do we have the?
Should have. I signed it. Let me call my office.
Thank you.
You don't have it. We don't. Pastor Sherman, really appreciate your prayer, sir. Appreciate you being here today. We'll make sure that we get you an acknowledgement for this day, and thank you so much, okay?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, let's continue with our consent portion of the agenda.
Our consent agenda consists of items 1 through 17, items 1 through 17.
All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 4th, Commissioner Mason.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to consent the following items from Engineering Services Committee. Maybe it's easier to say the ones, there's three that I want to have spoken to, Ms. Bonner,
Yes,
which
sir.
is 25, 30, and 39. I would ask for consent on the remainders if that's the will of the body.
25, 30, and 39.
25, 30, and 39. We need some discussion.
You want to, okay, so you're recommending to consent the remaining items under engineering services?
That's the request.
Okay, that would be item 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24,
26.
26, 27, 28, 29.
I have a question about 29.
You have questions on 29? Okay. Number 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Do we?
I'm trying to get in the queue. All right, thank you.
All right, we're going to get in just a second. I want to let Madam Clerk catch up. You good, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Can we continue? All right. Chair calls on Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Bobby Williams.
I think I did what I need to do.
Did what you need to do. All right. Commissioner from the 1st, Commissioner Jordan Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to pull item 14.
14. Okay. All right. You done, Commissioner Johnson? All right. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 3rd, Commissioner Catherine Smith McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to consent under public safety, items 46, 47, 48, and 49. If that's okay with my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th. Oh. All right. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 4th, Commissioner Alvin Mason.
Yes, this, Madam Clerk, this addition to the agenda, can I
Yes, sir.
do that at this point?
You can if you have unanimous consent from the commission to appoint Mr. Ryan. Well, let me just read it for the record, the correction, and then we'll move. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's already on there, just correcting the name.
Okay. Item number 51 is correction, a name change from Ryan McKnight should be Ryan M. Downs. And I think you have before you the addendum agenda along with the talent bank questionnaire.
Correct.
So we have unanimous consent to add this to the consent agenda?
Any objections? Seeing none, noted.
Okay.
Add to
And
the
for the
consent.
record, sir, we'd like to also acknowledge item number 46. You've been handed out a corrected copy of the agenda. If you need to make notation on the correction, General Counsel Brown, can you?
On behalf of the fire department and legal review, a couple of typos were noted. So 2.1 was corrected, and 2.3 was corrected to indicate that any amendment to this agreement must be in writing and approved by all parties, which is standard.
Okay. All right, thank you, Attorney Brown. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Brandon Garrett.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner, correct? Okay,
Yes.
she put 51 up there. I'd like to motion to approve the agenda and consent as stated.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk,
That
we have a
Ms.
motion.
Franum? Okay. To approve. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no other colleagues in the queue, Madam Clerk, we're voting.
That motion carries with Ms. Pulliam out.
Okay. All right, as I understand, Madam Clerk, we have someone that's here today that we need to address first. We're going to move to item number 45. Yeah. All right, before we move to that item, Madam Clerk, can we acknowledge the minister today? I think you have the
Okay. Sure.
the information. Thank you.
Pastor Sherman, will you please stand? Yes, sir. As children of God, our scripture tells us that men ought to always pray, and that we are encouraged to pray for those who have authority over us. And with that being said, by this presence be it known that Michael J. Sherman, pastor of the Covenant Family Church, is the chaplain of the day. May his spiritual guidance and civic leadership serve as an example for all citizens of Augusta. Given under my hand this 6th day of February, 2024, Garnett L. Johnson, Mayor. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Sherman, thank you again, sir. Pastor Sherman, have a great day. Thank you for that much-needed prayer. All right, Madam Clerk, item 45.
Okay. Item 45 is to receive as information a presentation by Malden and Jenkins of the results of the 2022 financial audit.
Good afternoon. This afternoon, you'll be receiving, exactly as stated, the results of our 2022 financial audit. And the report is approximately 300 pages long, so it is being posted after presentation. We will also have hard copies available to any of you that wish to have one. If you would let Ms. Bonner know, we will get a hard copy of the report to you. It is also being emailed to you shortly after the presentation, both the report and the presentation that Mr. David Irwin will be making to you. I'd recommend that you don't open it on your phone. It may cause you a little bit of difficulty. But without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Irwin, and we'll be available to answer any questions after the presentation. Thank you. David, it's all yours.
Thank you. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Again, my name is David Irwin, and I'm with Malden Jenkins. I was the partner who oversaw the 2022 audit of the government's financial statements, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this afternoon to discuss you all the results of this year's audit. Won't take up too much of your time, but the purpose of this afternoon's presentation is to provide you all an overview of our independent auditor's report, talk about the results of the 2 compliance reports that we issue in conjunction with the audit, hit a few of the financial statement highlights, discuss some information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate to you all, and then, of course, to answer any questions that you all may have. Now, again, there are several different types of audits. What the government is required to have conducted annually is what's called a financial and compliance audit, which, again, is what we are presenting to you all this afternoon. The objective of our audit is to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. The purpose of a financial audit is to enhance the degree of confidence of the intended users of your financial statements, the readers of your financial statements, whether that be citizens, investors and creditors, or elected officials such as yourself. So part of our responsibility is to identify and assess risk of material misstatement and to design and perform our audit procedures to respond to that risk. We don't review every transaction. Again, that's not what a financial audit does. But what we do we test your transactions via audit sampling in order to satisfy our concern and to evaluate that risk of misstatement. So again, just kind of wanted to explain to you a little bit in further detail of what a financial audit entails. Now, again, the audit that we are discussing here this afternoon is for the government's 2022 year end. So again, obviously, we're here in February 2024. We're presenting this to you all a little later than we have in the past. So I added a slide here that provides a time frame of the audit to kind of further explain what transpired during our audit process. Again, you all have a December 31st year in. So as what we have done in the past, we spent the months of January through March of 2023 doing our preliminary audit procedures. During this time, the Finance Department closed the year, closed their books, performed the year-end closing process, and prepared for the audit. We began the audit in April of 2023. The audit fieldwork typically lasts 4 to 6 weeks. So in a normal year, we would be done with audit fieldwork the last week of May, beginning of June, in order to meet the June 30 deadline. As you all know, the cybersecurity attack occurred in May, which again was right in the middle of our audit and effectively brought the audit to a standstill. The government's audit is due to the state within 6 months after year end. So again, with you all having December 31st year end, it is due to the state every June 30th. But due to the cybersecurity breach, the government requested and was granted a 6-month extension by the state. So again, the audit was kind of halted for several months to allow you all ample time to recover from the security breach. We resumed the audit in mid-October, mid to late October, and finalized the audit in December to meet the 6-month extension deadline. So again, because I'm a little later presenting the audit to you all than in years past, I just kind of want to give you all a synopsis and a recap of what transpired during the year. Now on to the audit itself. The financial statements that have been presented to you all are the responsibility of management and members of the board. As your independent auditors, our responsibility is to express an opinion on these statements. Now, we conduct our audit in accordance with government auditing standards and generally accepted auditing standards. And I'm happy to say that we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on this year's report. Again, this is what you want. This is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as your external auditor. What this means is that, in our opinion, the financial statements are considered to be fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, as part of the audit, there are 2 compliance reports that we issue, the first of which is the single audit report. Again, a single audit is a compliance audit that is required when an entity has over $750,000 of federal expenditures during the year. The government had a little over $73 million of federal expenditures in 2022, which resulted in us having to perform a single audit on 4 major programs. As was the case with the financial audit, we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the single audit as well. The second compliance report that we issue is called the Yellow Book Report. The Yellow Book Report is a report on the government's internal controls and your compliance with various laws and regulations. And I'm happy to say that we do not have any audit findings to report to you all this year, meaning we noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the government's internal controls during our audit. Again, with you all being one of the largest cities in the state, you all obviously have a significant amount of financial activity for which you have to account for. In addition, with all the new accounting standards that are being implemented each year, and really just how complex the financial reporting process has become, it makes it all the more impressive to stand before you today and say that we're not only issuing a clean opinion, but also we have no audit findings. So again, that's certainly something you all should be proud of. I do want to thank Donna, Tim, and the entire finance department for all their hard work this year. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there were obviously some unique and unusual challenges that occurred this year. But again, everyone did a great job of pushing through that and getting us everything that we needed in order to get the audit finalized. So again, just want to thank your finance department for all their hard work this year. Now for a brief overview of your financial statements. Again, you all prepare what is called an annual comprehensive financial report. otherwise known as an ACFR. Now, an ACFR requires the inclusion of additional information that goes above and beyond the basic financial reporting requirements. This document is submitted annually to the Government Finance Officers Association, otherwise known as GFOA, where they put it through a pretty stringent review process. Not only their professional staff, but they also have a special review committee that looks at this document. And when they look at the government's ACFR, their goal is not to assess the financial health of the government. What they want to do is make sure that the necessary information is in this report so the readers of your financial statements can do so themselves. And through this review, the GFOA has once again awarded the government the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for fiscal year 21, and that certificate is included in this year's report. So this is, I believe, the 7th year in a row that the government has received the Certificate for Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So again, that's something you all should be proud of. It's really just another example of you going above and beyond the basic financial reporting requirements and continue to raise the bar. So again, congratulations to you all on that. As you look through the financial statements, one section I always like to point out is the Management Discussion Analysis, otherwise known as the MD&A. This begins on page 5. It's right after our audit opinion. I always strongly encourage everyone to read this section. As Donna mentioned earlier, this document is some 300 pages long, so I certainly understand you all not wanting to read this report cover to cover. But again, if you can, I would strongly encourage you to read the MD&A. The purpose of the MD&A is really to make it easier for a broader audience to use and better understand your financial statements. And it does this by providing a narrative explanation of the financial statements from management's perspective. So if you ever have any questions about any fluctuations in financial activity or anything unique or unusual that occurred during the year, oftentimes you can find the answer within the MD&A. In addition, there's quite a bit of comparative information in this section, meaning there's financial information for not only the current year, 2022, but also the previous year. And to me, that adds a lot of value to the reader. It gives you a much better understanding of the current year activity when you have the prior year numbers available for comparative purposes. So again, if you can, please take the time to read through the MD&A. Now, the government's basic financial statements, they're broken up into 3 components, the first of which being the government-wide financial statements. And the government-wide financial statements, they provide a broad view of the government's operations in a manner similar to what you would see in a private sector business. All the government's funds are combined into 1 of 2 columns, depending on the nature of the fund. You have a column for your governmental activities and a separate column for your business-type activities. But we have a slide here that summarizes the government's financial activity for the year from the government-wide perspective. But as you can see on this slide, the government ended the year with assets and deferred outflows of resources of around $2.3 billion, approximately $1.5 billion of which are your capital assets net of accumulated depreciation. Again, capital assets, that's land, buildings, utility systems, machinery, equipment, et cetera, that's owned by the government. Total liabilities and deferred inflow resources were approximately $1 billion. Of that amount, around $742 million are long-term in nature, meaning they're not due within the government's next fiscal year. Looking at revenues, you all had revenues of approximately $537 million. That's an increase of around $26 million compared to 2021. Expenses total $489 million, and that's an increase of around $30.5 million compared to prior year. So this resulted in an ending net position of approximately $1.3 billion, which represents an increase of approximately $48 million for the year. So again, all in all, a good year for you all from a government-wide perspective. While you saw an increase in revenues, you also had a corresponding increase in your expenses. But again, nevertheless, you all were still able to increase your overall net position by a little over 4% this year. And again, net position, that's not what you all have in the form of cash. Net position is merely the difference between assets and liabilities. The second component of your financial statements are the fund level statements. Again, this is what you all typically see throughout the year. The fund level statements, they focus on individual parts of the government and report your operations in more detail than that of the entity-wide statements. And of all the funds that you all have, if I'm in your shoes, my primary focus is on the general fund. Again, the general fund is the main operating fund of the government. and therefore it accounts for the majority of your revenues received and funds expended. But we have a couple charts for these next few slides, the first of which breaks out the general fund's revenues for the year. Now, again, this is just for the general fund, but total revenues were approximately $171.4 million. That's around a $10.3 million increase compared to 2021. Again, like most governments, the majority of your revenue is derived from taxes, which were a little under $132 million for the year. To break that down a little further, of that $132 million, property taxes made up around $62 million, franchise taxes were around $22.7 million, and sales taxes were around $42.5 million for the year. A couple other significant revenue items worth mentioning. As you can see on the slide, you all had charges for services of $22 million for the year. This next chart breaks out the general fund's expenditures for the year by function. Again, total expenditures were approximately $170.6 million. That's an increase of just under $11 million compared to prior year. Once again, no surprise, the majority of your expenditures, or a significant part of your expenditures, was for public safety, which was around $78 million. This accounts for approximately 46% of the general fund's total expenditures, which again is right in line with what we typically see of governments of your size. The city also had general government expenditures of $43 million and judicial expenditures of $24.5 million for the year. When you factor in other financing sources, such as proceeds from the sale of capital assets and transfers to and from other funds, the general fund's fund balance increased approximately $8.4 million for an ending balance of $54.4 million for the year. This next chart shows the fund balance history of the general fund over the past 5 years. Charts like these are always interesting to me. It's kind of interesting to reflect back on where you were compared to where things currently stand. But as you can see, your fund balance continues to increase, especially over the past 2 years. Some years have been flatter than others, but again, with everything that's gone on over the past 5 years and the economic uncertainty that has followed it, it's good to see that you all have still been able to continue to increase your fund balance. So congratulations to you all on that. And again, like net position that I mentioned earlier, one thing I always like to mention and remind people is that fund balance, again, is not what you all have in the form of cash for discretionary spending. Fund balance is merely the difference between assets and liabilities, only a portion of which is cash on hand. Additionally, one thing to keep in mind is that the general fund incurs expenditures of approximately $14.2 million per month. So you all ended the year with a fund balance equal to around 3.5 months worth of operating expenditures. Again, with you all being a December 31st year in, it's a strong fund balance, but that fund balance is very much needed to cover expenditures on into the next fiscal year. And to further that thought, I added a chart here that compares the general fund's fund balance in 2021 and 2022 with the government's fund balance policy and the GFOA's recommended fund balance policy. Again, back in 2021, the government's fund balance policy was revised for you all to have a goal to maintain around 180 days worth of operating expenditures at your fund balance. GFOA, which again is the organization for which you submit your financial statements for certification, they recommend a fund balance of somewhere between 3 to 6 months, depending on your year end. Again, with you all being a December 31st year end, GFOA's recommendation would more lean toward that 6-month period. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, property taxes are obviously a significant source of revenue for you all, and it's cyclical in nature. By your year end, the majority of your property tax revenues are received in November, December. So those revenues are needed to fund the next year's operations. But again, as you can see on this slide, you're doing a good job of continuing to increase your fund balance, but it's still around $30 million lower than that of your adopted fund balance policy. But again, as I mentioned, as you could see on that previous slide, you're doing a good job continuing to increase your fund balance, but we still have a ways to go. As I mentioned earlier, the goal, your fund balance policy goal is to have around 180 days worth of operating expenditures in your fund balance. You're sitting here around 108 days. So again, you're trending in the right direction, but there's still work to be done to meet that fund balance policy. One other governmental fund that I do want to mention is your Fire Protection Fund. Again, you all use this fund to account for receipts and disbursements of tax revenues for fire protection services. The primary revenues of this fund are ad valorem taxes and insurance premium taxes. The chart I have on this slide is essentially a financial history of the Fire Protection Fund over the past 5 years. Included in this are your revenues, your expenditures, other financing sources, and your fund balance. Again, other financing sources, what I refer to as that, those are essentially monies that are transferred in from other funds, mainly the Urban Services District Fund. But as you can see on this chart, expenditures, they consistently exceeded revenues in this fund over the past 5 years, but that deficit is offset by your other financing sources, which again are your funds transferred from the Urban District Fund. But again, much like the general fund, the revenues for the Fire Protection Fund are cyclical in nature. So the fund balance has of year end, while it is a strong fund balance, it is very much needed to cover the expenditures well into the next fiscal year. A couple of the funds I just want to briefly mention are the city's 4 major enterprise funds, which are your water, sewer, airport, garbage collection, and stormwater utility fund. Now, again, enterprise funds are used to account for operations in a manner similar to that of a private sector business. The goal of these funds are to be self-sufficient and to generate sufficient operating revenues to cover their operating expenditures. But this chart shows the operating revenues and expenses for these 4 funds. As you can see, Water Sewer Fund continues to do very well. It ended the year with operating income around $26.7 million. Garbage Collection Fund had an operating income about $1.4 million. Augusta Airport, it had a slight operating loss of just under $1 million. However, one thing to keep in mind is that capital contributions are not included in operating revenues. So when you add back in the capital contributions, the airport fund increased its net position by about $12 million for the year. Stormwater Utility Fund had a slight operating loss of around $767,000. But again, one thing to keep in mind is that included in your expenditures are depreciation expense. For the utility fund, it was around $692,000, which is a non-cash item. So while the stormwater fund had a loss, it actually generated positive operating cash flows, which again is certainly something you want to see out of your enterprise funds. One final item to discuss with you all, again, as I mentioned earlier, is just certain information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate. With you all receiving a clean opinion and no audit findings, the information on this slide is essentially a formality, but we received full cooperation from management and staff. There were no disagreements with management on any accounting-related issues that would have affected the financial statements. There were no uncorrected misstatements. And again, we are independent of the government as required by government auditing standards. Again, early in the presentation, I talked about the timeline of the 2022 audit. Since we're already into February, I wanted to add this slide that kind of discusses what's going on with the 2023 audit. And our goal essentially is just to get back on track to how we've historically served you all. We're currently in the process of doing our preliminary audit work. We anticipate our audit field work to begin the week of April 22nd. Our goal is to have audit field work completed by the end of May or the 1st of June, and the financial statements finalized and delivered you all by the end of June to meet that June 30 deadline. So as of right now, everything's on track, and I look forward to presenting the results of the 2023 audit to you all in either July or August of this year. So unless anybody has any questions, that concludes my presentation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a lot of information in this report. What I've tried to do is just hit the highlights, what I think is of most importance to you all. But again, thank you to your finance department for all their hard work. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you all and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, sir, so much for the presentation. I have a few colleagues that, well, actually a couple that are in the queue. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Wayne Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to your beginning of your presentation, you had compliance response. Anything over $750,000 federal expenditures? I'll wait till you get to that one.
Single audit.
Required anything over $750,000. Is that required to have a audit when it comes to federal money?
Correct. A single audit, again, as I mentioned, is a compliance audit, and it's required when an entity spends over $750,000 of federal expenditures. You all, obviously, the size of the government, are going to have a single audit essentially every year. The number of major programs that we audit, is determined by the number of expenditures that you had. But again, as I mentioned, you all had over $70 million in federal expenditures this year. So that required a single audit of 4 major programs.
All right. We did have the ARP money, which is American Rescue Plan money. Was that audited to make sure that the expenditures did fall in the guidelines set forth by our federal government?
Yes, sir. That was definitely one of the major programs.
And you did audit it?
We did.
Okay. As far as the following back through, you probably went down go down another 12 pages where you was talking about the fund balance, okay. 180 days fund balance. I believe mid of last year, I think, and somebody could chime in and tell me if I'm wrong about this, I thought we reduced our exposure from 180 days down to 150, 151 days. Was it, maybe the Madam Administrator, Interim Administrator could respond to that?
Commissioner, I think you may be speaking of the instance in which in 2021 there was commission approval to increase it, but then it was decreased. Ms. Williams, can you speak to those specifics? Do you remember when it was a higher number and then it was recently brought back down?
Yes, sir. There was, during a work session.
I can't hear you over here.
Sorry. There was a lot of discussion pertaining to fund balance at a work session that was had when Mr. Donald was here. But then the formal fund balance policy speaks to each individual fund, and that was adopted and left in place by the governing body.
What did we reduce it to? How many days, Donna? Well, because the auditor is recommending 180 days minimum, is that correct?
Right. GFOA is recommending. Now, the presentation is based on the fund balance as it was in for the recommendation, the policy that existed in 2022. And I will go back and check, but I think 180 days was still in effect at that time. And that is, of course, as Mr. Irwin said, the recommendation from GFOA. So we had previously, our fund balance policy was in the range of 60 to 90 days. That was probably for a good 15 or 20 years prior to us up in the target.
So where are we at now?
I do believe it is 180 days.
Thank you, Donna.
That concludes your questions, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you. And looking over this, multiple times you mentioned that you were auditing certain accounts and certain transactions. And what bank accounts were you given access to confirm the data that you were auditing?
What bank statements?
Yes.
We review all bank statements.
Interesting, because that's often been a conversation up here of us trying to see bank statements, because we always hear 108 days of cash on hand, just different things that we constantly hear. But then we also hear from our departments that money's not being released because of certain issues. So it's just interesting that you're able to see those statements, and the governing body at times has never been allowed to look at them. So just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sir, there are no other colleagues in the queue. Certainly appreciate you being here today with your presentation. Thank you so much. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Commissioner from the 1st, you got a question?
Your motion to receive this information.
You can turn your mic on. gonna second it? Okay, all right. So we got a motion and a second. We're voting.
Unanimous.
Thank you much, Madam Clerk. Let's move down through this agenda, top to bottom.
Okay. That would take us to item number 14. Motion to approve moving the amount of $25,000 from the remaining surplus money in the mayor's office 2023 budget to a capital account line in their 2024 budget.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the first, Commissioner Jordan Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to just get some additional clarity here. Since our meeting last Tuesday, there's been some concerns that what was said about this being a budget increase wasn't somewhat accurate. And I want to make sure that if I'm assuming something that is not accurate, that is on the record that it is not accurate. Any budget increases, of course, will bring a red flag in my mind simply because we asked our departments to cut their budgets. And I've even had department heads come to me and ask about would they be supported if they came and asked for the same thing. And I want to mitigate this whole notion of opening a can of worms. And so I want to get our finance department director back up here, but I believe she went out to speak to the gentleman out in the gallery. I want to address something very briefly before she comes back in. It was asked of me if this was just politics, and I want to be certain that to say that no, it is not. I voted for it during the Finance Committee meeting, so if I was going to push something that's politically motivated or politically driven, I probably wouldn't put my name next to it as a vote. I want to make sure that if we, in fact, go down this road, that, number one, we have the facts surrounded by it. Is it a budget increase? Is it not a budget increase? Will department leaders be supported? Will they not be supported? That is the purpose of pulling this to get additional information. So,
thank you so much. Director Williams, the commissioner from the first, has a question for you.
So,
Yes, sir. I
Director
apologize
Williams,
for
I asked this question last week, but since our meeting last week, there's been some concerns whether or not this item has actually translated to being a $25,000 budget increase or not being a budget increase. So I want you to speak to what happens when a department's budget has a surplus, where does that money go, and what would this translate to? Would this be an increase? Would it not be an increase? Are department leaders able to do the same thing? What does this item mean, just for clarity purposes?
Okay. The 2024 budget was adopted in November. Any changes to those numbers included in that document is either an increase or a decrease, up or down, and that happens regularly when items come to the floor. You can approve a change to any departmental level of their expenditures. You can decrease any level of expenditures. Back to your question as to what happens with prior year money, operational appropriations lapse at year end. That's policy. So any leftover monies in a department's budget are not available for them to use from, in this case, 2023. If they're leftover monies in my budget, they're not available to me to use in my approved 24 budget, which was already adopted. So revenue over expenditures at the end of the year goes into what you just heard, the increase, the decreases to fund balance. That is what is left over. That's how you increase your fund balance, is you have more revenues than expenditures at the end of the year. It's just a math equation. Okay. Circling back to, is this a budget increase or is it not a budget increase? Technically, yes, this is a budget increase, which the commission can approve from monies left over from the prior year's budget. That those operating appropriations in any department's budget lapse at year end. Now, can this body reappropriate those funds to any department, any place they see fit? Yes, within the scope of your authority. Yes, that can happen, but it will show that a budget was adopted for 2024 in November of 23, and it was X amount of dollars in order to spend, in this case, $25,000 from that leftover money. The 2024 number will increase by $25,000 so that purchase orders can be issued and expenditures can be made against this. You can't go back and apply expenditures that would be for this particular item or any other item like this. You can't go back and apply them against 23. They're recorded in 24, and so the budget has to be there in order to authorize that level of expenditures. That help?
Yes, ma'am. No further
Okay.
questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 1st. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 6th, Commissioner Tony Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As many of you are aware, when this first arose on last week, I was not in chamber. I think I left. As a matter of fact, I know I left early before this was brought about. So I get a call about the mayor wants an increase to purchase some furniture. How did I feel about it? And my answer was that the mayor was one of the major proponents of cutting the budget. And then I hear that the mayor wants $75,000 to purchase some office furniture. Now, it's my contention that we're in the month of January, and the budget had already been adopted, and it's to my understanding that the mayor had surplus money, which was about $60,000, if I'm not mistaken. And this is, by way, no indictment on the mayor. Let me make that clear. This is no indictment on the mayor. But I do find it kind of puzzling that if the mayor had surplus money and that he could have acquired said furniture in 2023 with whatever he had left over, it's just amazing to me that he would come before this body in January and ask for an increase. And I know the mayor wants to be fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money, so not spending or utilizing all of his budget, quote unquote, gave him that look. But it's strange to me that with the mayor being in that office for 1 year, that now all of a sudden, January, they see that they need new furniture. I think that would have been noted, and I've heard that that's the same furniture that's been there under the previous two administrations, and who knows furniture better than the mayor? I mean, who knows furniture better than the mayor? I think that the mayor would have recognized or should have recognized the need for that in 2023, whereby he could have utilized whatever money he had in his budget to purchase said furniture and would have been through with it, even if it meant him not having a surplus to show that he was fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money. So it immediately threw a red flag to me because what I feel that is going to do is going to open up a Pandora's box. If the mayor's able to get said monies, then every director that works for this government will be looking to do the exact same thing with any surplus money that they have left over too. So I say to my colleagues, we've got to be very careful on how we approach this particular request. And I think that had the mayor probably had hindsight and knowing what it was entailing right now, he probably would have used that $60,000 last year to get the furniture instead of coming in January. The year hasn't even started good and is asking for money for furniture. And I further resolved that perhaps the mayor should have taken his current budget, purchased the furniture under his current budget, and at the end of the year, June, July, just like we told every other director in this city that took a cut in their budget, that we would look at it as an as-needed basis. So we would have looked at the mayors in the same way. So my colleagues, be careful.
Thank you, Commissioner. From the 6th, Chair moves on to Commissioner Wayne Guilford from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this ain't supposed to be political, but it reeks of it, Mr. Mayor. What I'm seeing is last year, 2023, we had NGOs come before us. They wanted to do parades. They wanted to use the commons. And less words was used since this motion came up to where we could give out $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 and didn't even know if they were a nonprofit. Last year, there was $150,000 spent for playground equipment. Didn't have question which budget is going to come out. Didn't have an answer for that, but it was approved. And then we tasked my colleagues had tasked the administrator to find $150,000, which he did. The mayor could have bought the furniture last year. He could buy it this year. My question to the mayor, you know, I do support the mayor. Anything, you're talking 12, 14-year-old furniture in there. Maybe he should have bought it last year, and there was not a word that could be said or spoken right now. But, Mr. Mayor, how did you come about to getting to this point to put it on the agenda, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, sir. I don't mind at all, Commissioner Guilfoyle. And for the record, let it be stated that I pledged to run my office in the most fiscal way that I possibly could. As we entered the month of December, my staff made me aware that we had more than $100,000 left over in our budget, over $100,000. So, unbeknownst to us, we reached out and we were made aware of a capital line item, the ability to add a capital line item. Now, keep in mind, Commissioner, none of my employees are government employees or have any government experience. So when we talked and heard about a capital line item, I was like, well, it makes sense in that we'll use some of the money. And let me just clarify this. It could be for furniture. It could be for anything else. It could be for flags. But it was our intention to give at least 5 to 10% that we pledged back, and we've done that. So I said, you know what? Just leave $25,000 in the event we want to purchase furniture. Not standing that we will, but leave some of the money as a capital line item, which more than 3/4 of the departments in the city has. The mayor's office used to have one, as I understand, but we don't have one today. So I did it. I said, well, let us keep some of the money in the event we need it. Let the rest of it go back to surplus. So I'll take ownership of that, and I still stand by it. And I'm just going to note that any department that comes before this body who says, I can save you 10%, but let me hold the rest back, that's a benefit to this government. It's a cost savings to this government. So to say that the mayor is asking for a budget increase, that's under false pretenses. I've saved this government money intentionally, and I will continue to do it. Now, as we move forward in 2024, I may not use the $25,000 for furniture. So I understand we need some flags, we need some cleaning, we need a lot of other things. But I stand on my record of fiscal responsibility. That's who I am, and I stand by it. So let's move on through the queue. Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Brandon Garrett.
Before I move on, Commissioner Guilfoyle, were you done?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
This question is for Director Williams, if that's okay, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Director Williams.
I know this agenda item says that it's surplus money, but would it have been?
You cut your mic off.
Oh.
Capital line item.
Would it have been received differently or explained differently if instead of using the word surplus, it was carryover? Because I know other departments that have carryover, and they do have to come back to the commission to request to be able to use that carryover. So just help me understand there if your answer would have been different.
No, sir, my answer would not have been different. It would still have been recorded as a budget increase. It's just the different wording.
Okay. But am I correct in other departments would have to come over to request to use their carryover funds?
Most of your non-capital carryovers, carryover typically is used when an encumbrance already exists. That means that the funds have been obligated in that year, a purchase order has been issued, and those are much easier to identify and to pick up for the capital line items. Most capital line items are brought back to you guys in March for approval for the budget, the official budget carryover and change for those items which had been previously encumbered.
Okay. And so I think the mayor mentioned that some departments have capital budgets and others don't. Which of the departments have capital budgets?
Line items.
Or capital line items?
Okay, they're in the general fund, almost none.
Okay.
Capital line items.
Is it none or almost none?
I mean, you've got 80-something departments. I'd have to go look, but as a practice, capital is not typically budgeted out of the general fund. It is budgeted out of the capital outlay fund. That is a separate pool of monies, as well as
Did the budget's office go through the capital outlay budget?
Sir?
Should the mayor's office use the capital outlay budget
He could have
instead?
certainly requested that during the budget process. It would have been very, very easy to include that along with the request of all the other departments.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 3rd, Commissioner McKnight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I'm sitting up here listening to this, and we can bat the ball back and forth all day long. But what the mayor has said, I stand behind him. And I can say this, other departments that I've been into have some daggum nice furniture in them. And I've been in the mayor's office on several occasions. And it's outdated. It's been used by past mayors. And I see nothing wrong with this. Other departments, we give money to other entities. So I make a motion to go ahead and approve this and get it over with. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Commissioner Lewis, you're in the queue, sir. You're up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, as I stated before, and let me reiterate that my comments was by no way an indictment on the mayor. It was just that we can have fundamental differences and we can look at things from a different perspective. So when the question was asked back to Donna from my colleague from the 8th, and it was based on wording. And I think her answer was that any way you look at it, it's an increase in the budget. It's an increase. I don't care how you look at the word, it still goes back to being an increase in the budget, not a surplus, not a carryover. When you come back for it, it increases the budget. So that's all I'm saying. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis.
Thank
Chair
you, Mr. Mayor.
recognizes Commissioner from the 1st, Commissioner Jordan Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to briefly address Mr. Guilfoyle's comments about last year's allocations, those allocations that went to the community. When we tried to get money out to the Black Chamber of Commerce, $500,000 to build black businesses, there was resistance, but it got passed. When we tried to put money into Juneteenth, celebrating Black Independence Day, got resistance, but it passed. And the $150,000 that he mentioned that went to the East Augusta neighborhood park, we got resistance, but it passed. As a matter of fact, I'm going to send you a picture, Mr. Guilfoyle, of the current condition of that park. It's burnt, it's dilapidated, and $150,000 is not a big ask to renovate a park to help the community. So those additional dollars that you resisted were community dollars. And we're talking about $25,000 for furniture. You're not resisting in-house stuff. So I don't want to start pinpointing specific allocations, but those allocations that I stuck my neck out on the line for were dollars to help increase the community. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Madam Clerk, we have a proper motion and second it. Let's vote. Oh, you got a court. You still in, Commissioner? Yeah, okay.
7-2, with Mr. Mason and Mr. Tony Lewis voting no.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's continue with the next item, please.
Okay. That would take us, I believe, to item 35. Motion to approve award of Augusta Zone 1 Residential Waste and Recyclable Collection Service contract to Georgia Waste Systems, LLC, Waste Management, subject to the receipt of signed contracts, required bonds, insurance, and other relevant documents.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Wayne Gilmore. You're not in the queue?
No,
That's not
Mr.
you?
Mason. Mr.
Mason?
Mason.
Okay, all right, all right. Yeah. I thought we had 25.
25.
25.
I'm sorry,
okay.
it's 25.
Because 35 was consented.
Yeah, 25.
All right, all right. 25, Madam Clerk. 25. All right, Madam Clerk, you want to read into the record? 25?
Sir.
25?
Well, I read it. It was just the number
You read
that was
35.
off.
She read 25.
I read
Okay, you read 25. All right. All right. Director.
Well, Mr. Mason asked that it be pulled.
You got it. And Commissioner Mason, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Malik, would you go ahead and speak to this item here, number 25, please?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. So, this item relates to the city garbage collection, primary residential collection, and this is Zone 1. Zone 1 is roughly the older city area or the urban area. The previous contract expired on December 31st last year, and we are in a 6-month transition period. Since extension was not, the negotiation didn't work out, so we had to rebid this contract. So we started this process back in July, August, and I'm bringing back the final process back here. There were 3 contractors. They submitted the interest and the documentation. And in the review, we entered into negotiation with 2 of them, Coastal and Waste Management. And then finally, we were able to get consensus with the Waste Management to move forward for other new contract for a 12-year period. The reason is lengthy period because in the bid, we are requiring CNG trucks, and so there is an investment, and the contractor has to recover that cost as a reasonable amount added to the contract. So on the page 272 is the summary of what the rates are, unit rates. So in the contract, there were 4 options. So this body has a choice to go, and then the department has a recommended option. So the first option is option 1, which is the same level of service, which is providing right now. It's weekly pickup for all 4 waste. We have residential waste, we have yard waste, bulky waste, and recyclable. So that's option 1. The option 2 is the level of service a little bit differs. So option 2 is to yard waste and the garbage is weekly, bulky waste is biweekly, and recycling is biweekly. Option 3 is the same like 2. The difference is recycling. So again, the option 3, that is the recommended option. So difference is recycling. In option 3, again, the garbage is picked up once a week, bulky waste and yard waste every other week, and the recycling, the contractor will provide the recycling, not the city. Still, the program will exist. We will continue the program, but it will be contractor. And under this contract, contractor is obligated to provide the service if the citizens would like to have that service. And the reason behind it is because our participation is really on 15, 16%, even maybe low on that. And option 4 is basically just to pick up the garbage and in this one, and then do another contract to the yard waste. and bulky waste or recycling. So option 4 gave us general idea how much is just for picking up the cost. So those are the 4 options, and the recommended option is option 3, which is basically garbage going to pick up once a week, and yard waste and bulky waste every other week, and recycling will be offered by the contractor. So
Okay.
the cost of the services varies accordingly. And so the option 1 for cost is around $14.5 million per year. That include $2 million disposal costs, because that's also, we have to pay through this contract. Option 2 is $13.4 million, and option 3 is $12.6, and 4 is $9.6.
So you're saying option 3 is your recommended option?
Yes, sir, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned the fact that under option 3 that the contractor would be responsible for the recyclables?
Yes, sir.
What contractor?
The contractor, Waste Management right now, they're the one we recommended to enter into the contract with Waste Management.
So what benefit, if any, I'm assuming there is a benefit for having a contractor do the recyclables versus having the city do it?
So the primary benefit is to keep the cost down, because right now city is paying for the service, but service is really not required there. The cities are not utilizing that service. Our participation is very low. And so that's the option 1. If we go, so there's around $2+ million difference.
$2+ million difference in, you're saying savings to the government?
I mean, it's going to be savings to the citizen, because we're going to pass on this cost to the citizens as a service.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mason. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Brandon Garrett.
Thank you. Director Malik, first of all, where does Zone 1 cover? What area of Augusta?
So it's roughly is the urban older city area.
Okay.
Yeah.
And West Augusta, or is it?
It's West Augusta, downtown, all others here, and there are only roughly 36,000 accounts.
Okay. And so with the recommended option that you've put before us, will our other carrier that covers the rest of the county be trying to come back and change their contract to only picking up bulk and yard waste every other week?
No, sir, not the term of the contract. So Zone 2 and 3, which is suburban, we can call it, is covered by the other carrier. So that contract is good till December 2025. And at that time, cost of services went up after the COVID knowledge. We're seeing in construction and everything. So roughly it's 20 to 25% cost of service. So that time, the contract, my guess is that will go up by the same rate.
Yeah. So, okay. And so with the $440 per account, what is the current rate that Zone 1 is paying?
So the current rate is $320.50. But I do wanted to point it out that I came back to this body on August 1st, 2023.
Right.
That rate, when it was set, was there was a policy adopted by this body that should be adjusted with the CPI index and also pass through for the fee with general fund charge. But
So will this fee be charged for the entire county?
Right now it's going to be for Zone 1, but then
Is there?
and because it's tied to this contract, but then when we go to Zone 2 and 3, we're going to carry that fee.
So this 440 is going to be attached to the contract. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Well,
sir.
I know.
Yeah. Right now, that's what my recommendation right now is.
His recommendation is not to go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Bobby Williams. I'm sorry. Commissioner from the 7th, Commissioner Sean Frannum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
My apologies.
I have serious concerns and heartburn that we're going to charge one part of the community different and have different pickups than the rest of the community. And I think it's going to make us look really bad. I think that we need to go back to the table and get this figured, because you can't tell me that if you're in Zone 1, you're going to pay $120 more and get less service, and then we're going to have downtown and in Zone 1 where they're going to have every other week bulky pickup. That means our city's going to look like crap because they're not going to get picked up. But if you live in other zones, you're going to get picked up weekly. I don't see how we can move forward with this current proposal in any state. And then I'm concerned because you said that we're at 320 and it's on the CPI index, but I think you have the ability to change it without coming before this body. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the way it's written. But can I add to this? Because if the policy is applied, the rate for 2024 under the current services really should be for $416.95. So
Yeah.
there will be lots somewhere which we have to cover, either cut the service or pull the money somewhere to make up the gap.
So
for
we're
this
basically saying that there's going to be a tax increase next year for the citizens right now of almost $100 minimal.
Yes.
Already. And we haven't even talked about fire tax, which they conveniently brought up, in the financial statements about a fire tax increase too. So we're already talking about hitting them twice, but yet we see that we're in a pretty good financial state based on the audit that we got. I can't support this at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Frannum. Dr. Malik, I've always questioned how we have this regional landfill in our community, yet our rates are higher than that of our neighbors who also use our landfill. Has there been a discussion about making increases for those who haul their trash into our county?
So
before we ask the citizens of Augusta for another penny, we should look at those other partners that are sending trash to our community to pay more first. Has there been any discussion for that?
So we have to compete with the general market on that, and the rate increase $5 was done last year based on what the other landfill around the area rates are and all that. So if we place surcharge on the other waste more than what the market rates are, then basically, we're diverting that waste to somewhere else.
But does that prolong the life of our landfill for our citizens?
Yes,
by doing
sir.
that? It does, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir. I'm just a little confused, Dr. Malik. If we do nothing, the rate is going to go up anyway, correct? Is that what you're saying? Let's say we just do nothing, we just go back with the same old type contract we had before, you're saying the rates are going to go up, so?
So if we don't increase the rates, still, Augusta has to award the contract because the contract will expire on June 30th. So if we don't increase the rate, Augusta has to come up with the funds.
Hold up a second, Dr. Malik. We've got sidebars. I can't hear you. I'm waiting for them to get finished.
We're done, sir. I think we're done. You have the floor.
All right, go ahead, Dr. Malik. Go ahead, Dr. Malik.
There's two parts to this agenda item. One is the Zone 1 contract that's set to expire, the transition period set to expire, contract already expire on June 30th, 2024. So we will not have a garbage service beyond that. So if the commission want to keep the rate we have, then we have to find a way to offset the additional cost some other way. But there is additional cost.
So my question is, if we do what we're doing now, it's still going to go up. That's what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what you're proposing it's going to go up some, but you're trying to keep it down. Is that what you're trying to say, sir?
Yes, sir, that's the minimum, it's $10 per month.
Each person, trash cost is going to go up about $10 a month.
Yeah, the cost went up around 20% of that. So, and then the $10 per month is a fee which city charge to the account holder will go up to offset the increase in the cost.
So, okay, so, you know, I'm not that smart. So if we just do what we're doing, it's still going to go up. And if we change to what you want us to do, it's going to go up somewhat, but you're trying to keep the cost down, and it'll change services somewhat. So let's say if we go with the change of services, and I heard them ask the question about the remainder of the city. Do you plan at some time to change the remainder of the city, or does it stay like it is, or does it go up? Does it go down? How do we get the whole city pretty much on the same path?
So we can set the same rate, 440, for the all three zones, because it's going to go effect next year on this year property tax. As I said, you know, the rate should have been this year $416.95. So city already been absorbing some of the costs previously, and that's what, you know, the program is struggling to keep up with the services or the level of service which is required to provide versus the revenue collected.
I mean, I'm still not sure which way I want to go with this, but maybe somebody else needs to ask some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Thanks, sir. You said currently it's costing about $416 per resident. Is that what you said? Not costing, but the city is absorbing some of that cost. I know it's only $320 a year.
Yes, sir, yeah.
And with the action that we took last year to give you the ability to raise rates based on the environment, what will that cost be this year for the county? What will that go up to? If you take a 3% increase or whatever you need to, what will that be? How much of a percentage do you need to go up this year?
It's 20%. It went up, yeah.
Well, I don't think we gave you the authority to go up 20%.
I'm sure it will go up 2 and 3 same way, yeah.
Okay. Madam Administrator, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Could I task you to help out with this? And this is just an idea that I'm throwing out here. Instead of going up $120 a year on just Zone 1, what would this cost look like if we spread it out over the entire county? Because we know that from what we're hearing, services are going up, or, you know, costs are going up everywhere. So instead of just attaching this to one specific zone, and we know the volatility of these providers, just from what we saw last year and the year before when we were having service issues in general, you know, what would it look like if instead of going up $120 in Zone 1, we went up $50 or $60 countywide? And that way, you know, as we're looking forward and trying to make our trash service not lose money as we saw in the audit, I don't know. This is just me thinking out loud here, but I don't know if this is something that you could head up, or Dr. Malik, if this is something you could head up.
Yes. Commissioner, I would like to ask for additional time. Yes, we have discussed how the other zones would be affected based upon cost increases, but of course, this is not a conversation or a question I could answer immediately. And so while this is an active procurement, I would ask that you give us a couple of weeks. Dr. Malik, what do you think, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to go back and review not only this contract, but also the other contracts that will be coming up for renewal as well.
All right. Commissioner Lewis, I'm sorry, you have something additional?
So no, I was going to add that zone 2 and 3 will come back in a year. So that will require rate increase action. So either we do now normalize everything or do this and adjust that next year, but something, you know.
Okay, and I understand that, but when trash service initially rolled out, it was one price for the entire county. We've never separated per zone or per contractor. And so that's what I'm trying to get to is I think that as we're discussing trash service, I mean, we are a consolidated county. We need to make sure that everybody pays the same amount and build the contracts based on that. I know that Waste Management, they've never been one to come to the table with options to help us out. And I mean, I'm just recalling history from the past couple of years in dealing with them. I was really surprised that they were the ones that won the contract again. So I think that there's definitely another option.
Thank you. All right. Director Malik, did you want to respond before I moved on to the next colleague? You have anything?
No, I mean, the only thing I want to, we went through the procurement process. We started the negotiation with the coastal, and their final rates were higher than what Waste Management agreed to.
All right. All right. Commissioner Lewis, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Malik, if we take no action on this, I understand option 3 was your recommendation, and currently we're on an extended contract that will expire in June, end of June. Where does that leave us? If we take no action at the end of June, where does that put the city? What predicament does that put the city in?
So either we have to, I mean, basically, city has to find a contractor to serve the area.
See, that's it. So having to find a contractor and not knowing the rate that the contractor that you will find is going to charge is going to put us in a position of having to have somebody so we can literally get hit over the head because we're going to be needing a contractor. So therefore, we won't have any room for negotiating the contract because we're going to be in need. June 30th comes around, we're going to be in need because this contract ends. So whoever assumes or picks up the next contract knows that they have a leg up on the city. So is it to our advantage to deal with this now rather than to wait to this extension on this contract, this current contract end, even with your proposal of option number 3? And I can understand my colleagues have some angst against, I don't think it's good to see one portion of the city paying one rate and the other portion paying another rate. And when the amount of services where the rate increase is diminished, and the same rate, where the same rate is, they're getting this, they're getting better service. So it's kind of hard to digest. But based on your recommendation of option 3, that puts a tax burden on the citizen in those areas of about $120 more. And then me living in the suburban area, I won't see an increase, but I'm going to have better service. I'm going to have the same bulk pickup weekly, and they're going to have bulk pickup bi-monthly. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of a hard sale when we really look at it. So having heard my colleague from the 8th to ask the administrator for you all to look at what other options that we may have, and then come back with a recommendation, a better recommendation, even if it means spreading the cost throughout the city as opposed to one portion of the city having an increase. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir. The administrator asked for some additional time, and I think the commissioners are somewhat confused as to what we would like to do. I think that the proposal that he put forth is a pretty good proposal. At the same time, when you talk about taxing one part of the city one way, another part of the city another way, I think we still need to talk about something. I want to ask that, what do you say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
27.
Colleagues?
I think the administrator is committed to 2 weeks.
I was asking for 3 weeks.
For 3
That would
weeks,
make
all right.
it February 27th, the next committee session.
All right, 3 weeks. So that's my motion to bring it back in 3 weeks.
All right, I have a second from the 6th. Commissioner Guilfoyle, I have a motion and a second, Madam Clerk. Commissioner Guilfoyle, you are in the queue, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, you have the floor.
Well, Lee, let me ask you, over the years, I look at the solid waste and the utilities department as a moneymaker utilities department for the city. It always has been until the past 6, 7 years. For some reason, we started losing money. Have you said that we are comparable in charging bulk waste come in per yard, weight-wise, comparable to other communities that collects trash?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As far as if we're comparable there and the trash service charge has not changed, what's changing to where it's costing the utility departments more money to operate? Is it, I know that we had discussion during budget session about franchise fees and other fees that the city's charging to solid waste.
Yes, sir. So,
I know it went from 4% to 6% on the franchise fees. Can you kind of give me an idea what was the value of that 2% in dollar-wise?
yes, sir. So 2024 budget, rounded numbers. The budget, total budget is 25.9 million. 1.3 going to salary and benefits. 1.6 goes to other contracts that includes, for example, other environmental services, underground storage tanks, partially funding the vacant lot, litter pickup, illegal dumping, that kind of stuff. Then the 1.6 going to some volume discounts and operational expenses like equipment and all of this stuff. 525 is partially supporting mosquito control and street sweeping.
Right, but as far as the franchise fees,
Yeah.
that was probably your biggest
Yes, sir. So
Takeout.
2.3 is, the franchise fees, tax, and IDC in that. And then 18 million is the waste collection contracts, and then 300 is the sale. 670 is the natural gas because of the CNG. And then the revenue side in the budget is 21 million is the collection fee. CNG or the gas is around 2 million. Interest is 537, and then the transfer is 1.2. So that's kind of balance the budget.
Thank you, Malik. Mr. Mayor, may I ask the administrator something?
Yes, sir, you may, Madam Administrator.
Madam Administrator, since you're going to be coming back in 3 weeks, can we also look at how we could reduce the exposure to charges as far as the fees to the landfill? I know over the past 4 years, we had been having a gain in dollar amount from sales tax revenue, franchise, and everything, every other fee to where we got up to over $1 billion. Instead of putting, because this option 3 doesn't provide recyclable, I guess the contractor must reach out to the residential. We actually reducing the service, but we increasing the fees by $120 a year. Can we see what we could do within our own government without having to put this burden back on the taxpayers? No different than stormwater. We're supposed to supply the service, get all these culverts fixed, all these storm drains, et cetera. I got to focus back on this, but instead of putting the burden back, can we see what we could do within our own government? Because you was expecting a $5 million increase this year on sales tax, which I believe you had stated during the budget session. So if we could do that.
All right. Madam Administrator.
I can't get in the queue. Okay, thank you. Commissioner, when we return, we will propose several options, which we will make certain to review all sources to be able to cover the gap that is currently being presented today.
Yeah, I got a bunch of other colleagues in the queue, but Director Malik, you mentioned that some competitors as far as landfills. Are any of those located within this region or in the city? Who are we competing against as far as landfill, and where could they hold it?
So there are a lot of transfer stations. There's no landfill probably nearby. I think Savannah Waste Management is the closest by. I can verify. But there are several transfer stations where they collect the garbage there and then they haul it from there. So, yeah, that's what most of the haulers are doing.
Yeah, and if this body doesn't mind, as we're having a conversation about how we reduce costs, can we take a look at the model to where we could look at waste that's being brought into our community from other communities? I mean, it makes sense. If we're talking about having separate pricing programs for our own districts and own regions, it certainly makes sense for us to address, trash that's coming in without outside of Richmond County. Yes, sir, Dr. Miller.
I just wanted to clarify, there's two separate operations. So the landfill disposal is part of this landfill, the solid waste. This is a collection contract, so it's separate than the landfill.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner Franham.
Thank you. I'm going to throw one out there, and I'm not going to ask her to review it, but I think this body needs to seriously consider. When you look at our neighboring county gets 2 weeks service and pays $264 a year, and our county going to pay $416 in 1 week. They're free market. The citizens handle their own trash, and maybe we shouldn't be in the landfill business anymore. I think we strongly need to look at this. I think that when you look, we're not reaping rewards out of this. It's costing us money, and I just don't think that we need to look to see if we need to be in landfill business anymore. And I'm sure there's somebody that would want it. And at the end of the day, it's what's best for the citizens. And I think when you look at the difference of what they're paying and what they're getting in our neighboring county, it's ridiculous that we're not having this conversation to get rid of the landfill, because it's crazy to me that we're going to go up $100 for less service and a biweekly pickup on trash that the citizens are going to go, well, what week is it going to be picked up? And it's just going to trash up our city. So I would hope we have this conversation down the road. I know that possibly we can't have it right now, but I'm a proponent to get rid of landfill because I think it'd help the citizens.
Thank you, Commissioner. Director Malik.
Yes, sir. So I did look into that. That's very close to option 4. To my knowledge, twice a week pickup in Cranberry County in one garbage can. You can mix, whatever you want to put it there, 264. I ran the numbers, and I will share with Administrator. If we take out all other costs, if we compare service to service, hour is once a week, but that comes to $254.57. So it's less than $264 is once a week. But you have to take all factor out, all other costs which is associated to this service, just to pick up and disposal.
Thank you, Director. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 9th, Commissioner Francine Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. Now, what we're looking at now, and it's saying motion to approve this. Have this been out for, we had an RFP, it's been bidded. So can we, I don't know if we got anybody here from Ms. Sam's office or not. Can we just automatically go and ask for something different than what we're asking for when it's already been rated?
Yeah.
I'm just not understanding how we're going to
If this body has, since this body has not approved the contract, or if this body does not approve the contract, then yes, we would have to go back to the vendor, provided whatever solution that Dr. Malik, as well as the finance team, what we derive within the next couple of weeks, if that changes, then we would have to go back to the vendor. That may or may not necessitate the need for the scope of the project to change and the project to be rebid, but that's not something that we can determine at this time.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Scott. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make one last comment. I think years ago, we talked about getting rid of the recyclables and the problem that we had with it. I think there was a survey that was done, and only 24,000 out of the 200 and something thousand people in Augusta were using that blue can. So with that said, I am for a contract that has the contractor dealing with the individual for doing something with the recyclable. So I don't think that needs to be thrown out. I just think that we're losing money with the recycling program when only 24,000 people out of 200,000 people are using the recyclable program. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Madam Clerk, Commissioner McKnight.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing as what Commissioner Williams said. When I watch trash being picked up, I recycle, and the truck picked up both cans when and I thought, well, where's the recycling truck? Instead, they picked up my trash, threw it in, and threw the recycling in at the same time. So I'm where Commissioner Williams is on this. So I can't approve it today. I won't be able to approve this. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second to move this. Yeah, we do for 3 weeks. It's been that long to February the 29th? 27th.
Engineering Services.
To Engineering Service meeting. So there is a motion and a second. With that stated, let's vote. 3 weeks, 3 weeks. Send it for 3 weeks. Yep, 3 weeks. Let's see where we're at now. So we're at 30. 30.
That motion carries with Mr. Guilfoyle and Ms. Pulliam out.
All right, Madam Clerk, let's move on. I think that takes us to number 30, right?
Number 30, yes, sir. 29, Mr. Bobby Williams asked that that be
that's right,
pulled.
be pulled. All right.
Okay.
Madam
Item
Clerk.
29, approve the installation of 12 speed humps along Farrington Drive between Tobacco Road and Teakwood Drive per the Augusta adopted speed policy. Approved construction funds in the amount of $54,000.
All right, Commissioner Williams, you have the floor, sir.
All right, I don't really have a problem with the item itself, but I do want to ask just one question. When we came up with this a couple of years back, we said that each commissioner had $14,000 basically to spend individually. This is costing $54,000. I don't know, want to know where it comes from or what have you, but my thing is, so kind of explain to me, if you got a long road and you got to put some extra speed humps on it, and it's going to cost some extra money, where does it come from, and does it affect my $14,000, I guess?
All right.
So I guess I'm asking you, if I got a road that I come to you with and it's long and you have to put some extra on there, do I get another road to do that I can do during the year or something, or just give me something?
Mr. Ursher, I don't know if you can answer that, but I'm going
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think I can answer that. So good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So simply put, with this particular item, I'll give you a little history lesson, and I think it'll answer your question, but I'll keep it short. In 2021, the Commission voted to revise the speed hump policy where the residents no longer pay for the speed humps in their neighborhood. At that time, in 2022, the traffic engineering budget has been given $140,000 each year for this program. So we got 140 in 22, 140 in 23, and we got another 140 in 24. In none of those 3 years has every district qualified for speed humps. So if every district qualified for speed humps every year, then we would split the money up as evenly as possible, and we still try to do that. If you look at the totality of the program, District 5 and District 8 have received the majority of the speed humps over the 3 years of those. How I came up with 12, just really quick, is the policy says they should be about 500 feet apart and certain distances from intersections. If you look at Farrington Drive, it's a long U-shaped road that winds throughout the entire neighborhood, so that's how we got 12. So to answer your question specifically, in 2023, out of the $140,000 allocated, we only spent $100,000 of that money because, you know, those are the number of streets that we were able to qualify through the program, through the policy. So we had $40,000 left over. We worked with finance. That $40,000 from 23 was transferred into my budget in 2024. So this year, in 2024, I have $180,000 to spend on speed humps, assuming they can get through the process. So I guess an easy way to think of this particular one is $40,000 came from last year that was moved into this year. So really, I'm only spending an additional $14,000 from this year's budget.
I need you to repeat that one more time.
On this program.
Can you repeat that one more time?
So yeah.
You have money transferred from last year to this year, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Don't poke the bear. Don't poke the bear.
So long story short, there will still be plenty of money in 2024 for additional requests for speed humps if they can make it through the process. And you all know the process is quite lengthy, and so it does take a while. But and I know Commissioner Williams, you have one that's in the middle of the process, which I haven't been able to review yet, but we're working through that. So that's how we came up with this.
Okay. Motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion in a second. Madam Administrator, would you like to add something? Oh, she says capital. No. Okay, all right, it's capital. All right, Commissioner Johnson, I see you in the queue. Would you like to, Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, John, would that mean you had a budget increase? No. I'm just messing around. I'm just messing around. I'm only messing because the mayor laughed at me. But no, quick question. So, never mind. I got you. We're covered. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Frantham, you in the queue? Sorry. All right, you're out. All right. So, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second to approve. Seeing no colleagues in the queue, let's vote.
That motion carries 8-1, with Ms. McKnight voting no.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's continue.
Item 30 is approve enter into an agreement with CSX Transportation stating that Augusta, Georgia will pay for the preliminary engineering and review for the National Hills Drainage Basin Drainage Conveyance Improvement Project in the amount of $15,000.
All right. I think Commissioner Mason, did you ask for this to be?
Oh, 30. Yes. Where is it? Dr. Lee. That is in there. By the way, District 4 and Super District 9 thanks you for the Farrington speed humps. It's definitely necessary. Dr. Malik.
Yes, sir.
What say you to number 30 here?
So, this part of our engineering department, larger effort to address drainage in the older neighborhoods, and National Hill is one of those 4 areas. The other 3 are Forest Hill, around Turpin Hill, and Goshen area. So we completed the engineering part of it, but the bottleneck is the drainage that crosses the railroad track. and those are 2 or 3 cross drain, and they are smaller in size. So no matter what we do, still the area, especially around National Road Drive, where really flood is going to flood. So this is our effort to initiate the design process with the CSX, and basically we have to pay for all the services. Still, we're going to design it, but they're going to review. They have their consultant. That's what they want to charge. And then once they approve the design, then we should be able to replace those pipes with the larger size to get the water out of this neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Garrett from the 8th.
So as we're looking at these pipes from CSX's train tracks, we're going to be responsible for updating the size of their pipes?
Yes, sir. It's part of our project. So.
But never mind. Never mind. Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a proper second from Commissioner from the 3rd. Seeing no colleagues in the queue, Madam Clerk, let's vote.
Yeah. Or when there's potholes on there, we can't fix them.
That motion carries 8-1 with Mr. Mason voting no.
All right. All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, let's continue. I think that takes us to 39. Is that right?
39.
All right. 39, yep.
Is to approve award of construction contract to Reeve Construction Company subject to value engineering in the amount of $4,306,964.25, Barton Chapel Road, Gordon Highway Improvement Project.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Malik, this covers District 5 as well as a side of District 4, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? We're talking Barton Chapel?
Yes, sir.
And of course, Super District 9. Is this TF4? What funding source is this?
Yeah. So there's 2 parts. So this is the federal funded project just to improve the intersection of Barton Chapel out of the Gordon Highway. We're going to add it to turn lanes. And we were able to get $3 million from the federal and 20% plus match. But we do have a TIA project, yes, sir, that starts from Dean's Bridge all the way to the end of that. And that's, we are in the process of starting the design and probably in 3rd quarter of this year. And the concept, we're going to have public meetings, all that. So that's the larger project. But this one, we want to, we already have in the system, and it will help us to get the GDOT right away out of our way. So the rest is going to be just the city road system.
Okay, so at the corner of Barton Chapel and Gordon Highway?
Yes, sir.
All right. Coming back towards Dean's Bridge, coming back that way.
That's the TIA project, yes, sir.
Okay, and this one that we're talking about here is right at the intersection.
It's just the intersection.
Just the intersection itself. What's going to be happening? What service is being provided? What are they doing?
So we're going to be adding turn lanes to improve the traffic flow and safety at the intersection.
That's on the corner.
Okay, yeah.
Cover roughly around the gas station or the apartments to the other apartments.
Okay. All right, I got you. All right, thank you.
All right, there's nobody else in the queue. Is there a motion to approve?
Go ahead, motion to approve.
All right, I think I heard Commissioner from the 5th first. Commissioner Bobby Williams is proper second. Madam Clerk, let's vote. All right. No, it is not. So we did 45. We got item number 50, and I think that's the last one. And you see that's the last one. One last item. Item number 50. Madam Clerk.
Update on the on Fire Station 7 on Central Avenue.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Commissioner McKnight, this is your item. Nate, turn your mic on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I bring this one up again. I've brought this up back in 2021 when I got on the commission, 2022, 2023. Now I'm bringing it up here in 2024, which makes this about the fourth time that I've brought this to the dais. I want to ask you, I know that we've talked about plans for a museum, and it's yet to happen. I want to know where the funding is for it, and what I want to know is about the funding, but I also have been getting calls over the past few years about this property, individuals who would really like to purchase it and make it into a business. That area right there on Central Avenue is dubbed as almost the midtown of Augusta area, and it's thriving. And I just want to know what we're doing with it. If we're going to continue to talk about making it into a museum, then I personally don't see that happening, but I'd just like to know where we are with this, because I think otherwise I would like to see this body support letting an individual purchase it.
So good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners, Mr. Mayor. As you recall, we did have a very detailed presentation as it relates to this property, first commissioned in 1915, in which housed the first motorized fire engine in Augusta's history. During that presentation, we also talked about the current use and how it's currently being utilized today. We also talked about potential uses as it relates to this property, be it restaurant, community center, private office, or even residential. We also talked about the possibility of a museum for this location. Also in that conversation, we talked about the significant amount of funding that it would take to rehab this facility. And so with that being said, Commissioner, the fire department will support whatever decision is made by the leadership as it relates to this facility. So whatever the will and pleasure of this body, we will support.
Okay, I appreciate you taking the time to do that, and you and I discussed it the other day. We talked about it a little bit the other day, so it's up, I guess, right, it's up to this body to decide on what we want to do, and I'd like to have a further conversation with my colleagues about this as far as maybe selling it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I got what I needed to.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chief. Chair recognizes from the 7th, Commissioner Sean Franham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to understand what's the process of us possibly putting this property on the market.
Madam Administrator.
Is it in legal session?
That would be a better forum for this discussion. There are several ways we can dispose of government real estate, but yes, if you would like further discussion, I would suggest it be done in legal
We could
session.
please add this to the next legal agenda. Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 1st, Commissioner Jordan Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I missed your question, Commissioner Franham. Can you repeat it so that I'll know not to, if we
asked how the process of moving the property, selling it, like where do we go? And they said legal.
Okay, yep, got you. So that was part of my question. The second part of it is, Chief Burton or Administrator Dawes, can you remind me, we put that property on a marketing agreement, did we not? Or did we take it off?
We did not, Commissioner.
Okay.
It is not on the current marketing agreement with the Economic Development Authority.
Okay, okay. Well, that's my district, and I do want to see something done with it. So I guess we'll discuss it in the proper way. Thank you.
All right, so colleagues, can we receive this as information? I think we got enough action if there's no objection from this body. Madam Clerk, I see no objections noted. With that, if that concludes our business, I hereby close out this commission session. Have a great day, guys.